It's true. I sold my semi-scale Lion Master Hudson. I also sold my K-Line Allegheny. I even started tearing down the layout so I can redesign one that makes use of wider turns for scale size engines. Wait, no I didn't. So with all this O-scale versus O-gauge talk, I figured this would be a great opportunity to explain these and how on our 3 rails, we're doing both. Check it out. Welcome to Datafied, and today we're going to be tackling the elephant in the room of O-scale versus O-gauge. These terms should be easily definable, but as you'll find out, they're not exactly the clearest when you're looking on websites or just on boxes and listings from manufacturers in general. So let's figure this whole thing out first. When we start with scale, you think of scale models, things like aircraft and cars. You go to a hobby shop and they have all these different sizes and scales. The numbers represent what they've been scaled down to from their true-to-life counterparts. And in O scale, that scale should be 1/48 scale. So yeah, everything that's between the rails there, that should represent a 1/48 scale model, so everything on up, the locomotive or the rolling stock or whatever's in question, should be 1/48 scale size. And much like HO and N scale and different sizes of model trains, they all kind of adhere to that, except O gauge. But what's O gauge then? O gauge, you should be thinking of the gauge of a track, like you have standard gauge or narrow gauge railroading. These are real things, but O gauge is just talking about that. It's only talking about the width of the track. So an O scale train can run on 3 rail tracks. O gauge trains can as well, but it doesn't exactly mean everything above the wheels is going to be scale size. O-gauge typically refers to things that are semi-scale or traditional size, or maybe you've heard O27 thrown around. There's all sorts of different labels trying to explain the size of the thing that's on the rails that can also be on the rails with O-scale stuff. They all have the same, abilities to run on these tracks. There's nothing different there. That's their universal thing that links them all. But beyond that, it's up to the manufacturer not only how big to make it, how detailed to make it, but also what to even call it. And that's really honestly where things can get confusing, because we know what O-scale should mean. We know what O-gauge should mean, but everything else, even things that are labeled as O-scale, aren't necessarily scale. You jump on a website and you're looking for O-scale trains, and the little drop-down menu has HO and N and G scale, and you get to O-scale. Great. You go in there and there's a whole listing, a whole line of products that you can get. Let's say you're looking for a Polar Express. The first most expensive one you're going to see is gonna be double the price as one that you scroll down a little bit further and find. So what's the difference in these things? They're both Polar Express locomotives. They're both black and, look like Tom Hanks could be pulling a guy's beard from the bell on the front. So what's the difference? How do you tell? You go to the description, they both say the scale is O, and leave it at that. One of them is called a Lionel Legacy, and the other one is called a Lionel Lion Chief. That doesn't always mean that you can figure out the size of it from there, and I'll get to that in a sec. But in this case, the Lionel Legacy Berkshire full-scale engine is twice the price of the Lion Chief starter set kind of size. And so that's your scaled-down traditional size locomotive, and the big old Berk that has whistle steam and all these crazy sound effects and things like that, and different control systems in way more detail. Yeah, that's why that engine is double the price. So sometimes you can use things like price to figure it out, or in this case, if you knew that Lion Chief is typically more your starter set stuff, you can run to the conclusion that this is probably not a scale size locomotive. If you're going just for something around a tree, semi-scale is fine. And honestly, we'll get more to using semi-scale in a space anyways, because I feel like it doesn't exactly get the fairest shake sometimes. But yeah, if you're looking at things online, legacy doesn't always mean that it's going to be scale. Lionel's legacy system is a control system. It doesn't necessarily represent, how big or small or how scale or semi-scale the engine is. Because you can get a Lionel Legacy Union Pacific big boy, And you can get a Lionel Union Pacific big boy with Legacy still, but it's a Lion Master. And those are semi-scale. Those are scaled down slightly to be able to fit around tighter turns, something that we do quite a bit of here on our home rails. But yeah, the control system doesn't always lead to an avenue that says, hey, this is how big it is, this is Legacy, this is TMCC. No, they've made stuff with command control that isn't scale. So if you can't trust the labels, then what can you trust? Well, you can go off of the price thing, like I pointed out before. You can also go off of visual cues from the item. But again, this does get a little bit muddy. Let's take this Atlas boxcar. It's got tons of separately applied details. This thing was probably expensive when it was new. And yeah, it looks great, and it's got all sorts of, separately applied underbody stuff. You can even see the wood paneling in that. That's really nice. So this car is a full-scale, single-door boxcar. And this is listed as an O-scale item from Menards. But you'll notice it's a little bit, well, it's about as long, but it's not quite as wide and not quite as tall as the scale Atlas car. You'll also notice there's fewer separately applied details. It's got a brake wheel on there, but these ladders are not separately applied. They're actually just painted on, and they're part of the molding for the car. Same goes for the walkway along the roof. You'll notice you can't see through it. Like this one, you can. So sometimes when you're looking at things that are scale, they're not. And sometimes when you're looking at things that are semi-scale, they're actually the same size as their scale engines. Let me show you. Let's take this Lionel 40-ton stock car. It's got, again, nice separately applied details. There's even a nice little chain here on the brake wheel. I love this super thin walkway along the top, underbody detail, all that stuff. These cars are the same size, from the width to the length to everything, but this is a Rail King stock car, and it's got a good amount of detail. It doesn't have as much separately applied detail as this guy does, but it still looks fine, and in a train together, especially when they're moving, you're not gonna notice a difference between these two, and this is like 2/3 the cost of one of these guys. So, one of the things that I like to do, or like to encourage folks that are trying to expand their roster and their lineup, is, you can get some detailed stuff to look nice, but you can also still sprinkle in stuff that is semi-scale or considered semi-scale that is actually the same size. Now, how do you know that when you're looking at photos online? Because I take this car and I put it on a white background and an eBay listing, and you can't really tell that this is scale size. You can't tell that it's semi-scale. You just see a car with some wheels and some big old super prototypical lobster claw couplers. When manufacturers like Rail King make more cars, they just throw a different paint scheme on them and reuse the same tooling. But there is another set of tooling out there for Rail King. You can see these two here side by side. They are different types of cars. They're both Rail King. So if you're looking for more that are the scale size, but just aren't the scale detailed ones, like this one that's closer to us, you'll notice it's missing the little kind of step ladder at the bottom edge of the car, and the roof design is completely different. So these are visual cues that you need to look for. And that's your visual giveaway that this is the one that is scale size, not necessarily scale in detail, but still detailed enough to roll on the rails with this super detailed scale size stock car. I got more examples of scale versus semi-scale with my friend Happy Harry. Hey everybody! So this boxcar has been around for ages, and you'll notice that it's even the same number as this MTH Premier boxcar. But the Premier boxcar is not only quite a bit bigger than your traditional size, but it's also got separately applied details and the walkway and all that other stuff. You'll also notice, even if you can't tell from, how close or how far away these things are, because right now they look about the same size, right? But look at the lettering. The lettering is quite a bit thicker and chonkier on the traditional size one, whereas it's much thinner and crisper. The printing is much more, refined on the MTH Premier scale size boxcar. So if you're looking for more boxcars that are the Challenger type, you're gonna wanna look for those cues to kind of know what you're getting. Now I know with scale, you're not just getting size, you're also getting more separately applied details. But one of the things that I like to do here personally is be able to blend these things, like I mentioned before. And I feel like the MTH Premier scale size boxcars that I've had are just a different prototype, and so they're just based on something that's bigger, whereas these nice Atlas ones are more in line with my existing collection of Rail King cars that are just easier for my son to deal with here. And so I prefer finding scale size cars that match up with the rest of my semi-scale collection. That's not to say that scale is superior, because there's a lot of folks online that kind of make it seem like it's, you know, semi-scale is for when you're getting started and for kids, and everything else beyond that, you're gonna sell all of your semi-scale stuff and graduate to the great realm of O-scale, where you are accepted and loved and patted on the back for joining the club. That's not exactly a good way to approach things, if you ask me, because there's more than one way to enjoy this hobby, and that's one of the things that I love about O-Gauge. You've got your post-war and tin plate and all of your older stuff with all this cool nostalgia and lots of great interactive elements that make those a lot of fun. Then you've got all of your scale, prototypical, trying to make three rails realistic kind of deal. And that's fine if that's how you like to enjoy things, but don't make that as a way to talk down anything else that isn't doing things your way. I see the reverse as well. I see a lot of guys that are really into your made in America, post-war, right off the transformer, get out all the fancy electronics kind of stuff, and that's all they run with because they've seen too many failures and too many problems with command control and modern stuff and made in insert name of Asian country here. And there's a lot of kind of back and forth between all of your post-war camp and your scale kind of superiority camp. And folks like me are kind of in the middle of all this because I don't do a whole lot of post-war and I don't have a ton of scale. I have more modern but more semi-scale kind of stuff, and I'm blending that stuff here. I'm not just blending it because of the curves that we have. If you're new to the channel, this layout around me here has two 048 turnaround sections that limit the size of engines that we can run. But thanks to things like the Lion Master line, and K-Line has some really nice semi-scale examples out there, we can run really nicely detailed command engines around these tighter turns. And finding cars that look right behind them is something that I like to focus on. But that doesn't mean that I don't get scale stuff. It means that I cheat that system. This scale 40-ton stock car is a great size to put behind scale or semi-scale trains. And this guy is a great one to help expand that roster so I can run more of these at half the cost. So it's not just, you know, this is how we do things, this is how it's supposed to be, there's one way to do it. No, there's lots of ways to enjoy this stuff, and we're managing to do that here. So don't feel like, oh man, if I get my semi-scale stuff now and I get started with that, I'm gonna have to get rid of all of it because I'm just gonna get sucked into the scale world and I'm gonna graduate to that, and everyone's gonna be like, good for you, I'm glad you left those toys behind you. No, there's a lot of great ways to continue to enjoy this stuff. So don't let that be the defining thing that keeps you from enjoying the hobby the way that you want to. It's your railroad, it's your thing, so don't worry about what other people think about it, even though there's plenty of opinions with keyboard warriors behind them on the internet. And I've heard it before where folks are like, well, why does semi-scale even exist? Why don't they just make everything scale to clear up all the confusion? Yes, it's confusing, but what in turn it does is it makes this hobby more accessible to more people, like us. We wouldn't be able to enjoy a big boy around our railroad if it wasn't for the semi-scale Lion Master lineup. These engines have articulated wizardry that help them cheat around tighter turns. I don't have the space down here for 072, but I do have a love of these trains. We would have had to go to a different scale in order to enjoy stuff like the big boy, and I wanted to go with O-Gauge because it's a little bit more tough and rugged, and my young son was getting into trains with me. Or rather, I was getting into trains with him, and hi, here I am, I've been dadified. But semi-scale exists not just to act as a lower price point or an entryway or anything like that. Semi-scale can really be something that you can enjoy, as evidenced by what we're doing here, because it allows you to get more trains that can run around these tighter turns. It opens up those options that were previously unavailable if everything was scale. So no, I haven't torn down the layout. It's doing great. I love it here. My son and I have been enjoying stuff on here as well. I have pared down the collection a bit because remember that Break the Rules video that I made? Yeah, apparently I broke too many rules because with such a short track and with only so many engines that we can really get, I was finding myself running a lot of my East Coast stuff way less. And that's why I found a new home for the Hudson and the K-Line Allegheny and even our Lion Chief Plus 2.0 K4. They're all fantastic engines and we loved running them here. I just wasn't running them enough. I was running more of our West Coast and Midwest kind of stuff because that's what we focus on here. And focusing the collection has been a lot of fun, and branching out has been fun as well, but then I just realized it's kind of hard to do everything when you don't have, you know, all that space to do it. So nothing against those engines. I'm really glad that the people have them, are enjoying them as well, and we've got more stuff in the works. It doesn't mean that I'm done collecting, it just means that the collection expands in different ways. And a lot of those ways that you can expand stuff is with rolling stock. And so I wanted to focus a bit on that today while we talk about O-scale versus O-gauge. If you got more questions on that stuff, leave a comment down below. Love hearing from you guys, love helping you guys out. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram as The Secondhand Overland, the name of our railroad down here. Otherwise, I'm Dadified. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.